question. Yes?
Yeah, in your lecture, you said that skeptics and subjectivists had to separate perception from concepts.
Right.
Can you tie that back to how they have to separate and say that A is not A, just to round out?
How they what?
Have to also thereby imply that A is not A.
Well, they don't. Intrinsicists and subjectivists don't necessarily assault the law of identity as such. What they do is undermine all conceptual knowledge, including the knowledge of axioms, by detaching it from percepts. So for the intrinsicist side, you get the mystic variant, that reality is another dimension, which is where you get your intrinsic messages from. And that is a dimension which violates all the identity of this world. And in that sense, they become opponents of the law of identity. The subjectivist side takes the view that their mind creates reality, and therefore it's not bound by identity. It, will adapt itself to whatever human consciousness wants. And the other says it's God's consciousness. So they end up implying an assault on the law of identity. But historically, some of the staunchest advocates of the formulation of the law of identity have been intrinsicists, such as the medieval logicians. So, but the crucial point that I have been finding out, if I understand the deeper implication of your question, is that the key to what happened historically into the world is it lies in epistemology, not in metaphysics. It is not that people assault reality, or assault the law of identity, or do something bad in the realm of metaphysics, and therefore go off the rails. Nobody would ever dream of assaulting reality, just, out of the blue and out of the void. The only weak link that any opponent of the human race can get through is by detaching the conceptual level from percepts. That's what I tried to hint at in the lecture this evening. The perceptual level is inviolate. Only the conceptual level can be assaulted. And you can't assault it by simply making an error with concepts. The only way you can assault it is by detaching the whole conceptual level from reality. And therefore, in my view, the whole trouble with the history of philosophy lies in the theory of concepts, and the whole root of objectivism lies in a proper view of concepts. And that brings up another written question somebody asked here, which I'm determined to answer because it was really the thrust of my talk, but I can't find it now. But this person said, who was the person who asked that question about if there had been only Galt's speech and no introduction to objectivist epistemology? Who asked that? Gary? Oh, this is an excellent question. He said, what would be the fate of objectivism if there had been only Atlas Shrugged and Galt's speech and no introduction to objectivist epistemology? In other words, we had all the philosophy that's in Atlas Shrugged, but no objectivist theory of concepts or concept formation. I would say in that case, objectivism would stand no chance if that lacuna had not been filled by somebody else. I mean, maybe somebody else would have done it. But that is really the foundation of it all. And I've never seen that so clearly as in working on my book. The whole thing, every other thing in objectivism, politics, ethics, epistemology, everything flows from concept formation. Without that, you would be in the position, if I could give you a rough analogy, Atlas Shrugged would be like Galt's motor, but the theory of concepts is like the formula that only Galt could provide. And without that, you could not untangle or validate the rest of the philosophy. And therefore, I would say that there's no question in the world but that is the essence of objectivism and the root, and that is why, in my mind, that is, I'll put it to you completely subjectively, it's the theory of concepts that made me disagree with Ayn Rand in her own identification of herself. Now, we always, would kid around, not too seriously, but what would be her place in history and so on. I would kid around. And I would insist that she was, like Plato or Aristotle, and she'd say, no, I'm just like Socrates. I have some interesting ideas, but I need to find the Plato who will make a total philosophy out of my, interesting ideas. And she and I argued that several times. It was just a joke, because who wants to be Plato, But you see what we're talking about. But in my mind, the theory of concepts, when I grasped that, that's what made her Plato rather than Socrates, because that was now the complete, total, final, synthesized philosophy resting on its root. Other than that, it wouldn't be. So your question was very well taken, and I would never have appreciated it as much as, since writing my book, absolutely nothing stands without that, and the whole rest of the objectivism is getting into and getting out of that.